This class has been looking at being a servant, and we've taken a look at several different ways of service and what servant means and how we can be servants. This evening we're going to look at serving like the sons of Korah. Now, who can tell me who Korah was? It's probably not someone who's familiar to a lot of people. I'm sure there are some people in here who know who Korah was. But can anybody give me any information about Korah? Okay, well, all of you are going to learn something tonight then on that. But if you don't know who Korah was, then you probably don't know who the sons of Korah was. But we're going to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 16. And we're actually going to be reading quite a bit because we'll be reading the entire chapter. I'm sorry, I think it's Numbers, not Deuteronomy. Yes, Numbers 16. Right chapter, wrong book. I think once we start reading, some of you will remember the story. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, the sons of Reuben, took action. They rose up before Moses, together with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, chosen in the assembly, men of renown. They assembled together against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, "You have gone far enough, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" When Moses heard this, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will bring him near to himself, even the one whom he will choose. He will bring near to himself. Do this, take censers for yourselves, Korah and all of your company. Put fire in them and lay incense upon them in the presence of the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the one who is holy. You have gone far enough, you sons of Levi." Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it not enough for you that the Lord of Israel has separated you from the rest of the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them? And that he has brought you near, Korah, and all your brothers, sons of Levi, with you? And are you seeking for the priesthood also? Therefore you and your company are gathered together against the Lord. But as for Aaron, who is he that you grumble against him?" Then Moses sent a summons to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. But they said, "We will not come up. Is it not enough that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey, to have us die in the wilderness? But you would also lord it over us? Indeed, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not regard their offering. I have not taken a single donkey from them, nor have I done harm to any of them." Moses said to Korah, "You and all your company be present before the Lord tomorrow, both you and they along with Aaron. Each of you take his firepan and put incense on it. Each of you bring his censer before the Lord, 250 firepans. Also you and Aaron shall bring his firepan. So they each took his own censer and put fire on it and laid incense on it. And they stood at the doorway of the tent of the meeting with Moses and Aaron. Thus Korah assembled all the congregation against them at the doorway of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves out from among this congregation, that I may consume them instantly. But they fell on their faces and said, O God, God of the spirits of all flesh, when one man sins, will you be angry with the entire congregation? Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the congregation, saying, Get back from around the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Moses arose and went to Dathan and Abiram, with the elders of Israel following him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, Depart now from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing that belongs to them, or you will be swept away in all their sin. So they got back from around the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the doorway of their tents, along with their wives and their sons and their little ones. And Moses said, By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these deeds, for this is not my doing. If these men die the death of all men, or if they suffer the fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about an entirely new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that's theirs, and they shall descend alive into Sheol, then you will understand that these men have spurned the Lord. And as he finished speaking all these words, the ground that was under them split open, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up and their households, and all the men who belonged to Korah with their possessions. And so they and all that belonged to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. All Israel who were around them fled at their outcry, for they said, The earth may swallow us up. Fire also came down from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Say to Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, that he shall take up the censers out of the midst of the blaze, for they are holy, and you scattered the burning coals abroad. As for the censers of these men who have sinned at the cost of their lives, let them be made into hammered sheets for a plating of the altar, since they did not present them before the Lord, and they are holy, and they shall be for a sign to the sons of Israel. So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which the men who were hammered and had offered, and they hammered them out as a plating for the altar, as a reminder to the sons of Israel that no layman who is not of the descendants of Aaron should come near to burn incense before the Lord, so that he will not become like Korah and his company, just as the Lord had spoken to him through Moses. But on the rest of the day, all the congregation of the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, saying, You are the ones who had caused the death of the Lord's people. And it came about, however, when the congregation had assembled against Moses and Aaron, that they turned toward the tent of the meeting, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. When Moses and Aaron came to the front of the tent of the meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them instantly. Then they fell on their faces. Moses said to Aaron, Take your censer and put in a fire from the altar. Lay incense on it. Then bring it quickly to the congregation and make atonements for them. For the wrath has gone forth from the Lord. The plague has begun. Then Aaron took it as Moses had spoken and ran into the midst of the assembled. For behold, the plague had begun among the people. So he put on incense and made an atonement for the people. He took a stand between the dead and the living, so that the plague was checked. But those who died by the plague were 14,700, besides those who had died on account of Korah. Then Aaron returned to Moses at the doorway of the tent of the meeting, for the plague had been checked. So here we have the story of someone by the name of Korah, who he had been a Levite, and he apparently thought he had just as much right to be in charge of the children of Israel as Moses. He had a bunch of people that followed him and agreed with him, and they were accusing Moses and Aaron of lording it over them, of dragging them out of Egypt where they were slaves, but apparently they ate well, and dragging them out into the wilderness where they didn't have near as much good food. But, he was accusing them of basically dragging them out into the wilderness on false premises because they had not reached the land of milk and honey yet, even though this was just shortly into their trip. So these people basically stood up to Moses, said he didn't have any authority over them, and Moses called upon the Lord to judge between them. The Lord judged between them and destroyed Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and all those that followed them. You'd think that the children of Israel would learn their lesson, but as soon as these people were destroyed, they started, a large number of them at least, started to murmur and complain and accuse Moses of being the cause of these people's death. So God was angered again and, was getting ready to destroy all the people of Israel. It's kind of amazing how close the Israelites came to being totally destroyed multiple times, mainly because of their murmuring, their complaining, and also because of their disobedience. But here Moses and Aaron intercede for the children of Israel once again, and they are able to get God to stop the plague. And so another 17,000 people die. And so, the name of Korah becomes one that is synonymous with disobedience, with rebellion. And yet our lesson tonight is talking about serving like the sons of Korah. Let's go ahead and turn to Numbers 26, 10 through 11. If I could get someone to read that verse. And also 1 Chronicles 9 and 31. So Numbers chapter 26, verses 10 and 11. Okay. So here we find that the sons of Korah were not destroyed. They were not punished by God. And as we continue reading, we've got some more verses that we're going to read, and we're going to see some of the things that the sons of Korah did, and some of the things that they were known for. There's going to be several verses in 1 Chronicles, and then some in Psalms. So if I get someone to read 1 Chronicles chapter 9 and verse 31. Then 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 6. And then 1 Chronicles 6, 31 through 33. 1 Chronicles 9:31. Does anyone have 1 Chronicles 9:31? right. The Mattiah, one of the Levites, who was the firstborn of Shallum, the Korahite, had the responsibility over the things which were baked in pans. So here in Chronicles, at the time of Saul, the sons of Korah, the descendants of Korah, were in charge of certain parts of the priestly duties. So the sons of Korah had overcome the sins of their father Korah, and they were active. 1 Chronicles 12 and 6. Does anyone have that passage? Okay. So here, David's supporters are, part of them are listed, are the Korahites, the sons of Korah. So they were servants of David. They were supporters of David as he's trying to become the king and establish his kingdom. 1 Chronicles 6, 31 and 33. Now these are those whom David appointed over the service of the song in the house of the Lord after the ark rested there. They ministered with song before the tabernacle of the tent of meeting until Solomon had built the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and they served in their office according to their order. And these were those who served with their sons. From the sons of the Kohathites were Herman, the singer, the son of Joel, the son of Samuel. And if you look at some of the Psalms, especially Psalms 42 through 50, Psalm 62 and Psalm 72 through 85, you'll see that those Psalms were written by the Kohathites, the sons of Korah. So here we have a large group of children of Israel, Nadab and Abiram and Korah, that rebelled against Moses, and by extension they rebelled against God. Korah, Nathan and Abiram were destroyed along with their families, all their possessions. However, the sons of Korah were spared, and they were able to become servants. They were able to become writers of psalms, and they were able to continue serving the Lord. When we take a look at ourselves, and as we try and apply this lesson, we need to remember that for ourselves, that no matter who our parents may be, no matter what sins we've done in the past, we can overcome those, and we can be servants. We can be children of God. And we have to remember, as we look at other people, as we look at people around us, they can overcome their past as well. There's people who feel that because of what they've done in the past, that God will never forgive them. There's people that feel because what somebody else has done, that God will never forgive that person, or maybe that God should never forgive that person. And yet, when we take a look at the sons of Korah, when we take a look at the New Testament, and we take a look at forgiveness, the Scripture teaches us that we can be forgiven of any and all of our sins when we repent. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be consequences. And, we take a look at what happens a lot of times in the Scriptures. And, we're taught that the sins of the father are not accounted to their children. Okay? But that doesn't always mean that there's not consequences for the children because of the sins of the father. But we can always overcome a discouraging past. It must have been difficult growing up knowing that their father had died as a result of God's judgment. For their father to rebel against authority would have been a bitter memory for the sons of Korah. Yet these men did not allow their father's sin and subsequent punishment to pull them down. There are many people today that are in the same situation, that because of something that their parents have done, or maybe their grandparents, they've got a reputation that they have to overcome. And it also should be a indication to us, to be very careful about judging people because of their parents' reputation or their grandparents' reputation. For many of us today, don't have as strong of location ties and as strong of family ties as there used to be. I mean, 100 years ago, most of the people that grew up where their parents grew up, where their grandparents grew up, maybe where their great-grandparents grew up. They probably had a lot of extended family around them. And so there was a lot more institutional memory. We're down here in South Florida, and there's a whole lot of us that have moved in here without having a lot of family around. Now there are still, there are some extended families and some interrelated families, but when people move in, they don't have much of a reputation that they have to deal with. So a lot of us may not be able to relate as much as some others to the idea of the family's reputation is handed on down to the children, to the grandchildren. But, we need to understand that we can overcome that no matter what our background is. And we also need to understand that no matter what our background is, what our actions are, we can overcome that as well if we're willing to trust in God and to obey Him. The negative influence of a family can be changed. The name of Korah was used by Jude as a warning to false teachers in his day. In Jude verse 11, even this New Testament writer remembered the negative influence of Korah. Though Korah left a bad influence from his life, his sons left a positive example through their lives. How encouraging it is to know that the influence of families can be reversed. One can rise out of a negative situation and make a positive difference in the world. So we need to use what we have for glory of the Lord. The sons of Korah do not stand out like Abraham, Moses, David, Peter, Paul, James, or John. And they have frequently been lost in the credits in the minds of the Bible students. Yet a careful consideration of their lives manifests a marvelous spirit. They were willing to do even small tasks for the glory of the Lord. They used whatever opportunities to serve and to become to us a lesson of great men who see no task as too small when it's done for the Lord. Oh, what a message! One of the beautiful psalms attributed to the sons of Korah expresses it this way: "For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness." Psalms 84:10. Indeed, some of these men were doorkeepers in the house of God. They counted such an honor, for it was done in service to the Lord. Not all of us are going to be people of great renown. We're not all going to be people that are well known throughout the brotherhood, that are on everybody's tongue as great teachers, great preachers, are, great men of action. But every one of us can be servants within our congregation, within our family, within our neighborhoods. Because as we're, looking for things to do, being a servant doesn't mean that we have to have a really spectacular action. We don't have to have something that's going to bring the TV trucks in and get the headline news. But, it's just the little simple things. The sons of Korah were the ones that took care of the censers. They're the ones that took care of the bread for the priest in the offering. Some of them were doorkeepers, which basically meant that they looked after the people as they were coming into the temple, into the tabernacle, and helped the people out. And so, even simple things as servants are important to us and important to God. Because, there's the old saying, that, for the want of a nail, a horseshoe was lost. For the want of the horseshoe, a horse was lost. And, it continues on down to where a kingdom was lost. Just simply because of a very simple thing that was not done properly. And, the same thing within our congregation or, within our families. The simple little things are the things that will bind us together, that will keep us strong, keep us focused on God and on the needs of one another. So we need to be willing to be servants for the simple things, the little things along the way. The sons of Korah can continue to be a beautiful example of men who determine that they will not let their past become an albatross around their necks, but will focus on the possibilities of service and devotion to God. These men, while lost in the credits, became a credit to their God as they did whatever task given to them for the glory of the Lord. The greatness of their examples will forever serve as a powerful lesson to the commitment of their time and talent the Lord uses and blesses. Okay, there's a few discussion questions here that we can take a look at for a few minutes. What are the possible directions that the sons or daughters of an unfaithful father can go? I mean, if your parents, if your dad or your mother is unfaithful, what kind of impact is that going to have on your life? What kind of impact do you think it might have? Tom? Okay. So if we have a good example, we're generally going to have a good impact on our children. If we're to service on time, that's going to set a good example. If we're always late to service, or if we're frequently absent, then that's probably going to set an example to our children that, worship really isn't that important. It's just something that we kind of do when we get around to it, when it's convenient. But if your parents are not, setting a good example, or if they're even setting a bad example, living wrong, as children, we can pretty much go one of two ways. We can either follow their example and, turn to the world to follow their bad habits, or we can determine that we're going to do what's right, that we're going to live right, and that we're going to obey God. No matter what our parents do, no matter what our brothers or sisters do or our friends, that we're going to do what's right. And that's the attitude that we need to take as Christians. But, the influence of parents is extremely important on their kids. If each one of us thinks about, the influence that our parents had on us, we're going to realize that a lot of the things that we do are done, much like our parents did. I'm sure all of us have a few things that we specifically said, I'm not going to do this like my mom or my dad did. And there are things that we can change because we focus on it. But a lot of the other stuff, we're probably pretty much like our parents. Jerry?
I think it's kind of interesting that alcoholic parents, you might think that the children just, by that example, say, well, I'm not going to involve in that. But studies evidently show that most of the children become alcoholics themselves. There are some that don't, but the majority follow right in the parents' footsteps.
Yeah, because the example of parents is very powerful. And, it takes a definite decision and definite commitment to radically change from what your parents model, what your parents do. But it certainly can be done, both for good and for bad, because you can go either way. Okay, are the sins of fathers passed on to succeeding generations? Okay. Well, what does Ezekiel chapter 22 say?
Well, no.
On that.
Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 26. Her priests have violated my law and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and the profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths.
Try Ezekiel 18:20.
I can't remember.
Try Ezekiel 18:20. Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 20.
Is it 18?
Yeah.
Verse 20. Oh. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, neither shall the father bear the iniquity of the son. The righteous of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So, it says that the sins of the father are not visited upon the son. And yet, if we remember, if someone was an illegitimate child, they could not enter into the assembly of Israel unto, I believe it was 7 generations. So, why was that if the sins are not visited upon the sons? Consequences, yeah. Because remember when we said earlier that, the guilt or the sin does not go upon anyone other than the person who commits the sin. But sometimes there's consequences. And those consequences can be for people who are not guilty of the sin, but they are, dealing with the consequences from it. They were talking about the family of Dathan and Abiram, and it says even to their little ones, and they were completely swallowed up and destroyed. And yet the little ones were not guilty of the sin, but because of the actions of their parents, they were punished as well. What is to be our attitude of serving God, even in the small task? What should be our attitude towards serving God, whether it's something simple or something really elaborate? I'm sorry, what?
Do it joyfully.
Okay, joyfully. It should be something that we're happy to do, that we're willing to do. Should it be something that we want to make sure that everybody knows about? It should be something that we're doing because we want to do it. We're doing it because it needs to be done. But it shouldn't be something that we're doing so that we can get a lot of credit for it. It may very well be impossible to do it so that nobody knows about it. But we don't want to be like the Pharisees that were standing on the street corner, handing out alms so that everybody could see them. And it's not necessarily that it was bad for them being on the street corner handing out alms, but rather it was bad for them because they were on the street corner handing out alms so that they could be seen. It was their attitude that was wrong. Not necessarily their action, not even necessarily where it was, but the reason why they were there and the reason why they were doing it. And the last question, we've got about 2 minutes here, but why is it important that we see the freedom of will involved in decisions of fathers and their children, or mothers and their children, parents and their children? Why is it important that we see free will involved in it? Or is it important?
God created us with free will for a reason.
Okay.
If we take that gift from God, yet we don't pass it on to our children, what kind of a life are we giving them?
Okay.
We're not giving them a godly example, that's for sure.
Now, how would you?
Well, if you train your child up in the way that he should go, their free will, once they become that free will entity, obviously we have to nurture our children,
Right.
control their actions until a certain period. But then the fact that they turn themselves into a servant of God and do those things because they have that free will to do it, not because they're under somebody's thumb and they're doing it grudgingly. They're doing it because they understand the importance of it, because you taught them and you showed them by your example of how they should act
Okay.
towards the Lord.
So as our children are growing, we're training them, but we have to realize and we have to install in them that their obedience, that their faith comes out of their heart because they have a choice. And also I think one of the points to make with free will is that no matter what mom or dad are like, how bad they are, the children have the choice of being good. And it goes the opposite way. The children have the choice of being bad, no matter how good mom and dad are. And so we need to judge each individual on themselves, not on what their last name is, not who their parents are, but whether how they behave and how they act. All right. Thank you all very much.